It's about time for another quiz, so grab a handy squirrel and some spray paint, or, whatever other writing implement you may have handy, because the questions are: what president kept the devil as a pet? What two presidents were linked by a college roommate? What president once jumped out of a window to stymie the legislative process? Who was the only president who has been a prisoner of war? What president gave the shortest inaugural address in history? And a bonus question: who was the first owner of the very first armored presidential automobile limousine? Think you know the answers? Let's find out. Welcome to American Esoterica. If history class gives you the MacArthur Park, this is the cake out in the rain, the essential stuff in between, the personalities, events, and other ephemera that shape our history and culture. I'm Brian Powers. There's a whole lot of random presidential trivia to throw at you, so let's dive right in. I often feel this way about my own dog. You gotta leave me alone. Okay. All right. You can sit here, but you gotta be quiet, okay? Who is in the booth with me right now, and who I sometimes affectionately refer to as Beelzebub. But our second president, John Adams, took things a step further by allegedly having a pet dog in the White House named Satan. Now, back then, apparently, it wasn't quite a big deal as it would be today. But this wouldn't be the most creepy, kooky, or altogether ooky pet kept in the White House by the Adams family. John's son, John Quincy, was gifted an alligator from none other than the Marquis de Lafayette, which he kept in a bathtub in the executive mansion and allegedly used to terrify visitors while giving them a tour. For one more on the subject of presidential pets, Andrew Jackson had a talking pet named Pole that apparently had such a filthy mouth that it had to be removed from his funeral for loudly swearing during the service. Speaking of lots of swearing and bad hygiene, just like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon later, we have two presidents with ties made from a college roommate situation. It's not inconceivable that President John Tyler found the political spotlight through the same regional Virginia elite class that produced his father and his father's roommate at the College of William and Mary, one Thomas Jefferson. Both roommates would go on to become governor of Virginia, but only one would sire a future president. Take that, Thomas Jefferson. Not content to have just that illustrious family tie, John Tyler the Younger began his legal career working for founding father and the second Secretary of State, Edmund Randolph. The Old Dominion elite were a pretty tight crew, which is why Virginia dominated in early politics. It's also why the institution of slavery became the shackles on the early American experience. With Virginians like Jefferson, Madison, Washington, Randolph, and Tyler at the fore, you can bet that Virginia's interests were pretty well looked after. But wait, what's that I hear? Is that Illinois music? Yes, indeed, and it's accompanied by a stovepipe top hat. In 1840 or 1841, as a member of the Whig Party serving in the Illinois legislature, Abraham Lincoln was in the middle of a political stunt of sorts. The state bank was set to fold as of the end of the legislative session, which the Democrats wanted and the Whigs did not. Thinking the session was mostly over, most Democrats had already departed the Capitol, but Lincoln had a plan. He and the Whigs would prevent the adjournment of the session by mostly not participating in the session, denying the remaining Democrats a quorum. If they attempted to adjourn, Lincoln and a few others would be on hand to force a count. There would be no quorum, so no adjournment. No adjournment, the state bank stays open. This worked okay for a little while, but the Democrats hatched a plan of their own. They had clawed back several members and kept them just outside the chamber. After the latest call for adjournment had come and Lincoln and company demanded a roll call vote, the Democrats began filing in slowly. Lincoln and his Whig compatriots had already voted. As he did the math, a grim-faced Lincoln realized that with their votes counted, there would be a quorum. He had to act fast. He tried to leave by the door, but was prevented by the crowd of Democrats there. Instead, he ran to the window, threw it open, and jumped out of the chamber, which was on the second floor, followed by the other Whigs. The thinking went that if they weren't present at the end of the vote, they would have still denied the quorum. The Speaker didn't see it that way. They had been present, their votes were recorded, the session adjourned, and the bank died. For his efforts, the breathless retelling in the Illinois State Register sarcastically foretold big things in Lincoln's future. By his extraordinary performance on this occasion, Mr. Lincoln will doubtless become as famous as Mr. Speaker Penrose at Harrisburg, which redoubted champion jumped out of the window during the late Buckshot War in Pennsylvania. Yeah, take that, Speaker Penrose. Abraham Lincoln is going to be as famous as you. Speaking of courage under fire, there's only been one president who was a prisoner of war, and that war was our very first as a nation. He was born somewhere along the border of North Carolina and South Carolina. Nobody knows for sure which one. When the American Revolution began in 1775, he was only 8 years old. But Andrew Jackson, along with his brothers Hugh and Robert, joined a local militia at the age of 13 after British soldiers swept through the Carolinas and attacked the settlement where they lived. Hugh died of heat stroke after a battle in 1779. The younger boys soon found themselves couriers for the larger Continental Army. And when Andrew was 14, they were captured by the British. It was a brutal confinement. In one episode, the brothers refused to shine a British officer's boots, so he slashed each of them with a saber. They were eventually sent on a 40-mile march to a prison, which is where they each contracted smallpox. Their mother negotiated for their release, but Robert never fully recovered, dying shortly after he came home. Their mother died soon after from cholera she came down with while aiding the war effort in Charleston, leaving Andrew Jackson, an orphan, with a vendetta. Speaking of getting a little short, the shortest inaugural address in history belongs to George Washington. His second inaugural address came in at just 135 words long. It's 2 paragraphs, people. He gave it in the Senate Chamber of Congress Hall in Philadelphia on March 4, 1793. And part of the problem may have been that, with his exceedingly uncomfortable dentures that were not made of wood, it would have been painful to do much talking. His first inaugural address clocked in at around 10 minutes, which is going to be the length of this episode unless I wrap it up soon. Unlike in 1793, today the American president is driven around in an extremely technologically sophisticated armored vehicle known as the Beast. But until 1941, presidents were just chauffeured around in stock vehicles. After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, President Franklin Delano Herbert Walker Hussein Roosevelt decided that he wanted to be visible rather than hide in the White House, and he wanted to go for a ride. With the nation now at war and under an unknown threat of attack, the Secret Service wanted to transport the president in something a bit more heavily armored. The problem is that there was a spending prohibition that set a cap on the cost of a car purchased by the federal government, around $750, so it would have been impossible to buy an armored car on short notice with that gap in place. It was then that somebody realized they may already have something that would get the job done. A car decked out with armor and bulletproof glass, just sitting in the parking lot of the Treasury Department, which had seized it in a tax evasion case in 1932. It was perfect, and it served as FDR's temporary ride until a special purpose-built car could take its place, leased from the manufacturer so as to sidestep the car spending cap, which is only about $10,000 in today's money. When he was informed of who the armored 1928 Cadillac's original owner was, Roosevelt reportedly said, "I hope Mr. Capone doesn't mind." This has been American Esoterica. All sounds were made by me, Brian Powers, and my dog, Dolly. Did I get it wrong? Did I get it right? Just want to talk about the lifelong friendship of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon? Drop me a note. The address is yell@americanesoterica.com. More information on the show can be found at americanesoterica.com. Thank you for listening, and God bless America.